I'm not ready for this part yet. Well, hey there, and welcome to Redeemer Online. My name's Corey, and look, we are so glad that you're here. It's our mission to help the physically scattered to digitally gather and grow spiritually. And if that's something that you're interested in, you haven't done so yet already, then I really want to encourage you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, the like button, and that notification bell down below. In this video, we're going to talk about the 3 tools that Christianity has to offer for understanding pain and suffering. But before we do, I want to acknowledge the fact that, well, you might be thinking to yourself, I'm not ready for this part yet. That might be entirely true for you. Regularly, when I'm talking with my wife, Alana, and she's sharing something about something difficult that she's dealing with, it can be really frustrating for her if I immediately jump in and offer solutions. You know, have you tried, or have you thought of? Why don't you? Why did you? The truth is, we're not always ready immediately for solutions. We're not ready for fixes. Sometimes I just want to be heard. Sometimes I just want to feel seen. Sometimes I just want to be understood. I'm not ready for the fix-it part. And that's okay. And if that's true for you, then please just press pause on this video and go watch the previous one if you haven't, entitled You're Not Alone. Because that conversation is all about feeling seen and heard and understood for what you're going through. But if you are in a place to begin moving forward, then I want to share with you 3 of the spiritual tools that Christianity has to offer when it comes to dealing with pain and suffering. So let's get into it right away with tool number 1. We've talked about it a bunch actually on this channel, and it's called Lament. It's all about where you aim your complaints in life. You see, there are plenty of worldviews or religions or spiritual ways of dealing with pain and suffering. Some rationalize your pain, some will seek to minimize your pain, and to be honest, it kind of feels like some will criticize you for your pain. I mean, some worldviews see pain and suffering as the direct result of unfulfilled desires, that you suffer because you want something that you didn't get or that you thought you deserved. Pain is the result of having desires and wants. And so the answer to dealing with your pain is to learn to stop desiring things. But sometimes that can kind of feel like the pain is your fault. It's your fault for not transcending to a higher spiritual plane of existence and continuing to just be ruled by your desires in this life. Some worldviews see pain as just the buildup of bad karma in your current or your past life. And so what you need to do is live a much better life this time around, and perhaps in the next life you won't suffer as much. In other words, this pain might not be your fault, but it's the you that came before you's fault. Others see pain as a spiritual reality that we speak into existence, that so long as we don't acknowledge it, it doesn't exist. Don't speak of pain lest you bring it about. There are some versions of Christianity that kind of buy into this superstitious idea around pain, that it's a part of our spiritual imagination. Some see pain as proof that God doesn't exist, because if he did, wouldn't he do something about it? None of these are actually what the historical Orthodox Christian faith teaches, though. In fact, the first tool that Christianity offers in dealing with suffering is not to blame you for it, it's to encourage you to acknowledge it and aim your complaint to heaven. We don't deny the existence of suffering at all. We think it's a part of life. And the Christian faith encourages and invites you to present your pain in all of its ugliness to God. I mean, that's exactly what Psalm 88 does. We did a whole video on that last week that we released. The ancients believed that it was perfectly acceptable to blame God for your pain, to aim your complaint at heaven. The poet who wrote Psalm 88 actually accuses God of hiding from him, forgetting about him, and at one point he screams at God for allowing him to be treated as less than human by the universe. You see, while others may rationalize or try to spiritualize or minimize or criticize your pain, Christianity honors it and invites you to aim your complaints at heaven to take it to God. We believe he's a big God and he can handle it. We don't pretend pain doesn't exist. So that's tool number one. Aim your complaint at heaven. Take time. Don't hold back. And tell God. Now, how does that help? Well, like we said off the top of this video, sometimes you just need to be heard, to be understood, to be seen. It doesn't eliminate what you're going through, but it can help with the loneliness. The second tool for dealing with pain and suffering is to understand pain as divine discipline. In his book Outliers, author Malcolm Gladwell points out this interesting commonality amongst the world's most successful people. They all endured pain and suffering of some kind at some point. They've all had to overcome some sort of difficulty or despair in order to make it to where they are. I mean, the classic cliche holds true. No pain, no gain. It's often a cliche used around the topic of exercise, right? In order to build muscle, you actually have to paradoxically break your muscle, tear it, and then give it time to rebuild. You can't expect to grow without pain. And the truth is, while it's a difficult thing to accept when you're in the midst of any type of pain, my guess is that if you looked back over the course of your life, some of the times that you've grown most significantly as a person are as a result of pain. They're probably not things like, that all-inclusive vacation or when you binge watched all the seasons of Love is Blind. I'm guessing those are not significant moments of growth. It's often through pain and suffering that we grow the most. This is exactly what the writer of Hebrews, a New Testament document, it's exactly what they were getting at when they encouraged their readers to endure hardship as discipline. You see, the writer was writing to brand new Christians who had converted from other religions, but they were suffering. And in their old religious ways of viewing the world, they had a framework for how to deal with and understand suffering. It was typically proof that the divine was disappointed in them. And so they had these rituals and sacrifices and religious traditions to go through in order to try and make things right with the gods. But the author of Hebrews says, no. Hardship is not proof that God is angry with you or mad at you. Discipline is not the same as punishment. Discipline is what we subject ourselves to in order to grow and get better, to become stronger. I mean, if you think about it, the Bible is filled with stories of God using people to do incredible things, but rarely, if ever, does God use people who have not or will not suffer. God often uses the pain and suffering in his people in order to grow them and shape them into who they're meant to be. And the New Testament writers never expected a life free from pain. They actually expected the exact opposite. And they saw it as a way to grow. They found their faith strengthened in the struggle. I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago who's got an autoimmune disease that's robbed her of so much joy in life. And when I was asking her about it, she said that were it not for her suffering, she would not be able to help those who suffer as well. She wouldn't have the humble and loving heart that she feels God has given her. She thinks she'd be a far worse person without her suffering, and that God has used it to shape her into being who she is. That's choosing to see pain as gain, to look at your struggle through the lens of discipline as proof that God loves you like a parent and is just allowing you to struggle in order to strengthen you so that you can be even better service to others in the future. Finally, the third tool, pain binds. We're out of toothpaste. That's what my housemate back in college said once when we were over at my parents' house for dinner. I don't even remember what the conversation was, but all of a sudden he blurted out across the table, "Oh yeah, Corey, by the way, we're out of toothpaste." I remember thinking to myself, what do you mean we? Have you been using my toothpaste for the last 2 years? John and I had actually met in an interesting way, and we didn't really roll in the same social circles or anything like that. But one night, my dorm was hosting a party, and he showed up. He was there. Well, actually, he wasn't really there. He was just in the corner, not really talking to anybody. So I went over and I said, "Hey, how's it going?" And he said, "Good." actually not good. And he started choking back these tears. And he began to explain that he had just ended a 4-year relationship minutes before arriving to the party. Oof. Now, I had actually just gotten rejected by my long-term girlfriend earlier that week, and so I happened to feel up for talking about it. I sat down, I asked him what happened, and we talked for 2 hours. And at the end of the conversation, John took this deep breath, and he held out his hand and said, "I'm John, by the way." There's something about shared pain that can deepen, even forge a relationship. And you know this, I'm sure, that there's something powerful, not just about any sort of shared experience in general, like being in the same class, going to the same school, working the same job, or having kids the same age, but when you suffer some kind of pain together, I mean, it's a potentially profound binding agent, right? I mean, there's so much comfort in someone who can come alongside you in your suffering and simply say, "Me too. I get it. I know your struggle. I know your pain, and I'm with you." And to me, this is perhaps one of the most amazing aspects about Christianity. I mean, earlier in that same letter, Hebrews, the author said, because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. Now, the word for tempted here is not like how cookies are a temptation for me. That's not it. It's actually the word for trial. It's about going through trials in life. The author's point is that because Jesus suffered, he can help those who are suffering. He can come alongside anyone in any kind of pain and say, "Me too." To say, I know what it's like. I mean, he could say, "I know what it's like to suffer physically, relationally. I know what it's like to lose a loved one, to stand and weep with the others who have loved and lost. I know what it's like to be abused, to be stripped naked and exposed. I know what it's like to be mocked and made fun of, the butt of everyone's jokes. I know what it's like to have your closest friends abandon you and betray you. I know what it's like to have your family turn on you. I know what it's like to be so anxious that you're literally sweating drops of blood. I know what it's like to have people lie and smear your reputation. I know what it's like to cough up blood. I know how you feel. I feel what you feel." Jesus can say, "Me too," to whatever it is that you're going through. Pastor and author Tim Keller points out that our pain and suffering are a lot of things, but they're not proof that God doesn't love us. I mean, God got involved. He put on flesh and dwelt among us. He suffered with us and suffered for us. Sometimes people think that if God were a good God, then he wouldn't let us suffer, that pain and suffering are proof of his non-existence, or at least his non-caring. Sometimes people think the pain that you're in is something that you should be blamed for. But Christianity is so different. It's not the story of an aloof God who couldn't care less about the suffering of humanity. Instead, it's the story of a God who loved us so much that he was willing to become one of us, to enter into the suffering with us, so that whatever pain you're experiencing, Jesus has been there, and he's in there with you. For the past couple of weeks, our 2-year-old son has been sick. He's just having a tough go kicking whatever bug he picked up. As a parent, it's heartbreaking to watch your child go through any kind of pain and suffering. But I know he has to face these things in life. He's going to have good days and bad days. He's going to have heartbreak and disappointment. He's going to have sickness and perhaps disease, maybe financial challenges, mental or emotional difficulties. But whatever pain he'll face in this life, it'll never be proof that I don't love him. His pain is never going to be evidence of my absence. In fact, whatever he does face, he's going to know that his mom and I, that we've been there, and that we're in there with him. Friends, whatever bout of pain you find yourself going through, when it seems like there's nothing you can do, here are 3 things you can do. You can lament. You can know that your pain is not your fault. It's part of what it means to be human. So aim your complaint at heaven. Be heard, be seen, be understood. You are not alone in this. Secondly, find strength in your struggle. Endure your hardship as discipline, an exercise that is making you stronger in some area of your life, even if that strengthening is actually just of your compassion and your empathy towards other people who are suffering. And lastly, let it bind you to others. There's so much power in hearing those words, me too. Even if someone's not going through the exact same situation as you, most people are going through something and can relate. So let your pain bind you to others, especially to Jesus, knowing that whatever you're facing, he's been there and he's in there with you. Like a good parent loves their child, your heavenly Father loves you and he is with you in this. And so are we.